it's hard to know where to begin with today's book. And while this video is indeed a recommendation for a particular book, it is also a greater recommendation for the author as a whole. It is not fantasy, at least not in the general sense. It is fiction. Our book today is Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. Tom Robbins has to be one of my favorite characters. I apparently put a bookmark in here for pie and had forgotten about it. So if anybody wants some of Uncle Willie's pies, interesting. I'll put back in there and it'll be a surprise for another day. I've talked about Tom Robbins before. Tom Robbins has a very unique and interesting way with language. He writes words in a way that nobody else does. I would love to try and mimic his style, but I think it would make my brain melt. And so a lot of people that I've recommended Tom Robbins to over the years weren't able to get into it because of the strangeness of the language. And I understand that. The man writes weird. So I'm going to read just a tiny snippet to give you a sense. And if this doesn't intrigue you, forget what he's writing about. It's the way he writes about it. If you don't find that interesting, this probably won't be for you. This is the prologue for the book. The beet is the most intense of vegetables. The radish, admittedly, is more feverish, but the fire of the radish is a cold fire, the fire of discontent, not of passion. Tomatoes are lusty enough, yet there runs through tomatoes an undercurrent of frivolity. Beets are deadly serious. Slavic people get their physical characteristics from potatoes, their smoldering inquietude from radishes, their seriousness from beets. The beet is the melancholy vegetable, the one most willing to suffer. You can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. The beet is the murderer returned to the scene of the crime. The beet is what happens when the cherry finishes with the carrot. The beet is the ancient ancestor of the autumn moon, bearded, buried, all but fossilized. The dark green sails of the grounded moonboat, stitched with veins of primordial plasma. The kite string that once connected the moon to the earth, now a muddy whisker drilling desperately for rubies. The beet was Rasputin's favorite vegetable. You could see it in his eyes. And it goes on and on like that. So, as you can see, he writes weird. I find it delightful. I find it enjoyable. I find it amazing. This book in particular, Jitterbug Perfume, is probably my favorite of all of his books. You don't have to read his books in any order, although most of them seem to take place in the same universe. If you're able to actually catch references to other books, they're quick, they're subtle, they're Easter eggs, essentially. So you can read them in any order. I like Jitterbug Perfume because one of the main themes of the book is a theme I've always found fascinating, which is immortality. Jitterbug Perfume deals with perfume, the god Pan, immortality, and beets, but not beets as often as you would think. It is a fascinating read. His other books, he really does weird and interesting things. He has written a book entirely in second-person active voice, where you are the main character, and he tells you what you are doing right now. He's got a collection of short stories. He wrote a children's book about how beer is fermented. He has a flair for language unlike any I've ever seen. He is one of my favorite authors. And I'll tell this story because I've got a little bit of time left. I once read about his writing technique because they made a movie out of one of his books. The movie's not that great, but they made a movie out of one of his books, which means a screenwriter sat down with him and learned about his writing method and then wrote about it. I don't know for a fact that this is 100% true because I have never sat down with Tom Robbins and talked to him about it. But it feels true enough. The writer said that Tom Robbins approaches writing as a 40-hour-a-week gig, 9 to 5. he writes. He sits down in front of his typewriter and he writes. When he begins a book, he has no idea what he's going to write about, who the characters will be, what the plot will be about. He sits down and he simply writes a sentence. He will then work on that sentence. The first sentence of the book especially, he will work on for a day or two, refining, polishing, changing, altering this word, altering that word. What if I change the tone of this? When he feels like that sentence is the best sentence it can possibly be, he puts a period at the end of it, and then works on the next sentence. And he continues this process until he has a book finished. Meaning he does not go back and go, oh, hey, yeah, now that I've written this character, I should go back and add into this chapter where somebody references this character. When you're reading a Tom Robbins novel, you're reading it in the order he sat down and wrote it. Which is the craziest way I can think to possibly write. But maybe it accounts for how unique his writer's voice is. This may fall flat, but I'm just going to grab a random segment here. Nowhere under yon setting sun will you meet water meant for bathing in, Alabar would caution Kundra whenever she grew antsy. And if that did not lull her restlessness, he would add, no perfumes will you meet either. He was correct. There was no perfume west of Bosporus. In the modern sense, there was no perfume anywhere, for the process by which a flower's fumes are extracted and preserved were using alcoholic distillation were not to be discovered for another 100 years. So on and so on. I knew that would fall flat. I picked up 4 portion. So we're not going to play that game again. I highly recommend giving Tom Robbins a try. He's one of my favorites. I wish I could write like him. I'm saddened that he is of the age now where I don't know how many more books, if any, we're going to get out of him, and that makes me sad. But each one of his books is a little masterpiece. I guess I should give this caveat. He does not shy away from sex or drug use. However, his drug use is taking mushrooms and smoking pot. That's as hardcore as his drug use gets. And the way he writes about sex is so Tom Robbins-y that it's not vulgar, really, because it's almost tangentially related to what's going on. He paints pictures with not just the words he uses, but how he uses them. His choice of words are as important as what the words are actually conveying. Anyway, Tom Robbins, go hunt him down. If he doesn't make your head explode, you'll thank me. I'll see you guys next time.